Hello, and welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast, where we learn about the ocean, share sea stories, and explore ocean careers. I'm your host, Kara Muzia. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, mermaids, pirates, ocean lovers, and land lubbers. Welcome to today's episode. Before we get into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to our latest patrons, Ben, Trenton, and Abby. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you too are interested in helping keep the ocean-tastic episodes coming, head on over to patreon.com/marinebiolife. For less than a dive tank refill or a cup of coffee, you can help support the show that you enjoy. Patreon.com/marinebiolife. Patreon.com/marinebiolife. Question: where was the captain sent after he hit another ship? To anchor management. Did you hear about the blue boat hitting the red one? They were marooned. My guest today knows a thing or two about ships. Rear Admiral Evelyn Fields is the first woman to be in command of a federal ship and the first woman admiral in the NOAA Corps. In today's episode, we cover what exactly the NOAA Corps is and what it means to be a member of the Corps. We also chat about some of the important work that was done aboard Evelyn's ships, including seafloor mapping and tuna and dolphin research that later shaped legislation. Please enjoy. Rear Admiral Fields, welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be with you.
So you have had quite the distinguished career in the NOAA Corps, and I want to take a moment and just break down what the NOAA Corps is in relationship to NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and does a lot of the sea and atmospheric monitoring in the United States. So could you explain how NOAA Corps relates with NOAA?
Sure. The NOAA Corps is one of 7 uniformed services. It comes under the Department of Commerce, of which NOAA is a part of. We, as the NOAA Corps, operate the ships, the aircraft, and operational activities within NOAA, diving and so forth. We are responsible for the safety and the operations of those assets.
Gotcha. So what else is part of NOAA Corps?
The NOAA Corps has, the NOAA Corps itself is a uniformed service.
Okay.
And as part of the uniformed services, we operate the ships. We drive the ships, we drive the aircraft, or fly the aircraft. We provide oversight for those activities. The diving office that NOAA has comes under not NOAA Corps, but under the operations, because NOAA Corps operates the fleet, and that's their primary responsibility for under NOAA.
Gotcha. Okay, so NOAA has the boats and the Corps drives them.
Yeah, that's certainly the simplistic way to put it.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm with you. But you didn't start your career in NOAA Corps. In fact, you started as a cartographer. So could you explain kind of how that came about and what a cartographer does and what you did?
All right. Well, when I graduated college, I, like everybody else in the 70s and even now, was looking for a job, and I wanted to have a job that was meaningful. I think most folks coming out of school are still very idealistic. And so I was looking for something that I thought could give back or could be a good career. One of my friends told me that NOAA was hiring civilian-wise. So I went down and applied for the job and actually got it. So I worked as a civilian for about a year, a little more than a year, before going into the NOAA Corps. Now, when I went into the NOAA Corps, the Corps had just started taking women into its service. Before that, it was only men. And the first woman came in about 4 months after I got my civilian job.
Awesome. What were you doing as a cartographer then?
A cartographer is like a map maker. Ships are the vessels that do the nautical charting, go out, they collect data for the nautical charts. And that information, when it comes back to the office, is verified. And then you put it on like a map, the depths of the ocean, so that that's what forms the basis for nautical charts that people use for navigation.
And so the nautical charts, it kind of tells you what's going on in the bottom of the ocean as far as being able to navigate through any sort of like shallow areas. And I mean, and you're also looking at, I mean, what else is on the bottom, right? So you have the trenches and you have, I mean, in the shallow sandbars and stuff like that. What are some of the other phenomenons that you kind of mapped out?
They would take what we would call bottom samples, which
Mm-hmm.
would be just that samples of the seafloor,
Mm-hmm.
and you would put that on a chart so that you would know whether it was a hard bottom or a sandy bottom,
Mm-hmm.
reefs, and all of the kind of features that could be distinguished on the bottom. Because certainly, when you have a vessel, you don't want to be dragging or hitting any of that sort of stuff. You don't want to run aground, and that's the whole purpose.
Right. So you were creating, you're taking this information that these ships were bringing in and creating these maps, and then the NOAA Corps opened up to women, and you decided that you were going to go for it.
Yes, a couple of the folks that I worked for, some of the male officers that I was working for and with, suggested that when they started taking women, they said, "Why don't you apply?"
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, why not? I guess at 23 years old, you kind of go, "Oh, the whole world is open to you, so why not?"
Mm-hmm.
So I did apply, and obviously I was accepted, and off I went to training class for 10 weeks and then onto a ship.
Amazing. What does training class look like for the NOAA Corps? Is that like, do you have, and when I think of like military, like boot camp to get to military, do you have to do that too?
Well, we didn't at the time. I think the folks now do a little bit of we would call it physical fitness, not necessarily boot camp.
Okay.
It's like an officer candidate school,
Okay.
and you learn navigation, you take firefighting classes, damage control classes, any kind of all of the things that you would need to run a ship effectively and to be able to take care of whatever came up. Because if there was a fire, you don't have a fire department to call, you have to take care of it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And any of the other activities that happen, like in your normal life, happens on the ship. So you have to be able to do whatever repairs and whatever need comes up. So those are the kinds of things that you're learning when you go through the training center.
Gotcha. So you are the fireman, maybe a little bit of mechanic skills, definitely navigation, driving the boat, all sorts of, you're a whole town onto one boat.
That's correct. You're the whole town, which is really kind of daunting if you think about it. But it's just part of the job, and you don't really get too carried away with it. You just take things as they come. We do plenty of drills and do plenty of things to make sure that we have the right skill base if something were to happen.
So now that you're in the Corps, what was your first deployment? You were also, I mean, you were going out and collecting these samples for the cartographers to make. Did you go out in the field at all as before the Corps?
Actually, I did. I didn't. It was just a temporary assignment, or I guess you would call it. I went out on one of the what we called field parties.
Mm-hmm.
They would take the boats out during the day, and they were always in the evening, unlike the ships. And I went out on one of those field parties, really to just get a sense of. I was grateful that the folks that I worked for said, you should go out to one of the field parties so you can not only see what's going on, but you can see kind of what being at sea is like, and what being in the Corps is going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and it was actually interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of gave you a little bit of a taste of what it may be like to be out in the Corps and out longer terms of the
Yes,
sea.
just a smidge.
What was your first deployment like out in the Corps and out officially offshore on a big ship?
Yeah, I was assigned to the ship, one of NOAA's previous ships called the Mount Mitchell, out
Mm-hmm.
of Norfolk, Virginia, and we did do the nautical charting, surveying for nautical charts, collected the data for the nautical charts, and we worked way offshore, actually offshore Florida.
Mm,
And when I say way offshore, I mean we were a couple of hundred or so miles offshore collecting the data
mm-hmm.
for the charting program.
I mean, a couple hundred miles offshore, that's technically considered international waters, correct?
That is correct.
And NOAA got the data. Does NOAA share that data? Is that international data, or is that pretty much just for?
The public can get the data anytime they want.
Mhm.
It's it's changed a little bit now, only from the standpoint that it's more digital, and so it's probably more readily available than it was before.
Mhm.
But yeah, the public is welcome to the data. All they have to do is just go to some of the NOAA websites or to some of the NOAA offices and make a request. There is a national archives that the data goes to also, that you can go to and take a look and download what you need. A
Mm.
lot of scientists do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool that that's so widely available, and that's a lot of data to cover. So, can you walk me through kind of what does a deployment look like and how long?
Well, we would go out for what we call a 10 and 3. We were
Okay.
out for basically 10 days and then in port for 3 days. So we would leave on a Monday, come back in the following Friday or 2 Fridays, because we were out for almost 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And then we would come back in for 3, 4 days in order to get new supplies and fuel and all those other kinds of things that you need, and then back out again. And that was the way we worked for about 8 months out, 9 months out of the year. And
Okay.
then in the winter, when we would come in, we would do bigger repairs on the shipyards if it was necessary, more stuff with servicing the engines and that kind of stuff, that activity that took place in port over the winter because it took a longer period of time.
Hmm. Very cool. Hey, Kara here. I hear it all the time. How do I become a marine biologist? Or my niece wants to help the ocean. Where does she even start? I hear from students, yes, and also nurses, HR professionals, and other mid career folks who wonder if they could still make their dream of working with sea turtles or sharks come true, wondering if it's too late to answer the ocean's call. Here's what I've learned after 20 years in the field and hundreds of interviews. There's no straight line, no magic degree, and no gatekeeper. You create the path forward. If this sounds overwhelming and vague, I've created 2 tools to help you stop wondering what if and start moving forward with clarity and purpose. The first is my free guide, Be a Marine Biologist Without the Degree. Over 1,000 people have already downloaded this guide and taken their first step towards ocean impact. Inside, you'll find 7 concrete, doable actions to help you get started, whether you're just exploring or ready to make a change. Then there's the Ocean Blueprint. This is a 30-day self-paced course that helps you build your unique path into ocean science and conservation without quitting your job or going back to school. Inside the Ocean Blueprint, you'll get daily prompts to explore your interests, skills, and next steps, a structure that turns overwhelm into real momentum, and a bonus section to root your work into ocean connection. You don't have to wait for a degree, a perfect plan, or permission. Whether you're wading in or ready to take the deep dive, these tools are here to help you move from dreaming to doing. The ocean called. Are you ready to answer? Links in the show notes and on my website, karagracemuzia.com. I can't wait to see the waves you'll make. And how big are these boats that you're working on?
Well, the first one that I was on was 230 foot, which is about the length of 2 football fields.
Mm-hmm.
So not very big.
not
Not
very, not
not
very big.
not very big in the scheme of things when you think about Navy ships and carriers and some of their destroyers and so forth.
And how big are some of those Navy ships then?
I don't know what the length is, but I know that when we would pull into, if we went into a Navy base
Mm-hmm.
for one of our imports, that you could pull up beside one of those ships, and there was still, from the stern of our ship to the stern of their ship, it was probably still another, maybe a whole ship length of ours. Those ships are much, much bigger than ours.
Oh,
I think ours, if you looked at some of the Coast Guard vessels, some of their mid-sized vessels would be more on par for what our vessels uh, size was.
okay. Okay, comparable with Coast Guard. That makes sense.
Yeah, some of the Coast Guard vessels are comparable, or our vessels were comparable to some of the size of the Coast Guard vessels.
Okay, very cool. You did this hydrographic surveying, kind of collecting the information along the bottom, and that was your first deployment. And then when you come back in, wasn't it? It's cyclical, right? Because you're not. How long were you doing these like basically 9 month at sea stints for?
We were assigned to the ships for 2 years,
Okay.
and it's just kind of the rotation that the general rotation for all of the officers. You're assigned to the ship for 2 years, and then you're assigned to an office job for anywhere from 3 to 4 years, and then you go back out for another 2 years to the ship. So it gives you a little bit of respite in that when you're in the office, you're pretty much working a 5 day work week like an average person, as opposed to across all of your weekends.
Mm-hmm. So it gives you a taste. When you're on the ship, do you miss the office? And then when you're in the office, you miss the ship? Is that how that works?
Not really. as I don't know. You look forward to going to the ship because when you're on the ship, you're out, you're away from the total mundane, what we would call mundane
Uh-huh.
kind of work. Things were always busy on the ship. There's always something going on. We're in the office. It's being in an office, sitting at a desk, doing what you need to get done. Lots of paperwork, lots of things that just seem kind of boring after being out in an operational environment.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. So it wasn't like a break. It was just, well, it was a break. It was a forced break.
Yeah, it was a break, but it was just different. And believe me, there we always looked forward to going back to sea, but then once you got to sea, probably about halfway through the tour, you were looking forward to going back ashore again. Like most folks, I guess we were never happy one way or the other.
There's pluses and minuses to each thing. That makes sense.
Absolutely, there are.
You didn't just do the hydrographic surveying for each deployment, though. I know you did a little bit of some fisheries and oceanographic research, and this is our second time recording this. And before you spoke about some of the tuna research.
When I took command of one of the ships, that particular ship did not do surveying. It did a lot of biological kind of work. Part of the project was to take a look at the bottom fish. It was really a flounder that they would take a look at for age and for what they were eating, because being on the bottom of the ocean or the estuaries that we were looking at, they could tell whether they could look at it for pollution, and that sort of thing is what they were trying to assess.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of the work was to be offshore doing what we call the tuna dolphin surveys. Back in the 80s, most people probably remember, maybe not, but there was always a commercial about Charlie the tuna, and everybody talked about, or the commercials talked about sustainable tuna fishing and whether the tuna were safely caught.
Mm-hmm.
They were not. Well, I guess I got ahead of myself there. When the fishermen fish for tuna, they look for dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
The spinner dolphins are in schools, fairly large schools. And if they would see a large school of dolphin, more than likely there was tuna below. So they would set their nets, and the problem came that the dolphins would drown in the nets, and that wasn't a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the fisheries or the tuna manufacturers and so forth were touting whether their particular brand of tuna, whether it was being caught in a safe manner for the dolphins. So
Mm-hmm.
it really wasn't about the tuna so much as it was about the dolphins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes. So you're saying that the fishermen would go out and they kind of look for these pods of dolphins, and in order to catch the fish, they would lay all these huge nets, and the dolphins would inevitably get tangled in it because they can't escape the nets either. And so they would get their tuna, but they would also get dolphins.
Yeah, and the dolphins would drown, unfortunately, because they would get caught up in the nets.
Gotcha. So the research aboard your boat or aboard your ship looked at that, and that was kind of where some of the legislation came from for creating these rules against fishing like that, correct?
That's correct. Because it's out in international waters, there's a little bit of controversy because, you know, some countries figured that they didn't need to be thoughtful about how they fished. Other countries thought they should be.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was more of a congressional thing to deal with. But we did the research or to pull together the information for them to use in their decision making process.
Mm-hmm. Provided the science and the data. I love it. And that was you were the first woman commander of the NOAA Corps, and that was your first ship that you had command of. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the first female to have command of a NOAA vessel. At the time, it didn't seem like it was a big deal for NOAA, and it certainly was a big deal. I don't want to make light of that because it was a big deal. But from my perspective, I just wanted to get my job done.
Mm.
It was one of these things where, well, I'm in the Corps. I'm a commander. You get to be a commander. You kind of expect to have a command of
Mm-hmm.
a ship, and so it's kind of like, what's the big deal here? Even though intellectually, yes, I knew it was a big deal. Um, but you just want to get on with the job, and a lot of times it just made I didn't want to do anything that really made my crew feel like there was anything so special going on, even though they knew that too. So
Mm.
it made for an interesting time because I obviously did a lot of interviews because people wanted to talk to me about it and wanted to put things out and so forth. But they also talked to the crew, which was, in a way, I kind of felt badly for them because they didn't ask for that, but they
Right.
didn't have any choice but to put up with it, I guess.
Part of the job.
Yes, it was. It was part of the job, and they did a good job. The crew was excellent. I can't complain at all.
Awesome. So you were command of this ship, and then you ultimately became the first woman admiral in the NOAA Corps as well. How did that come about?
Well, kind of the same way. I mean, as you go up the ranks and get promoted, once I made captain after the command of the ship, I made captain a couple of so years later. And the next step was admiral. And even though, as they tell you, the pyramid gets pretty small as you go up, everybody still wants the top job. I mean, who doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
So, what they do is the leadership of NOAA takes a look at your personnel records and so forth. They set up like a board, an interview board, and they take a look at your records and the information about you and your career and what you've done and your ability to lead people and do all those other things that sound so nice and wonderful in management. They select three or four, five people, and it is sometimes three, sometimes it's up to five. They select to take to do a final interview, and then they choose from that set of people for the admiral. And generally, they select two. They select the one who's going to basically run everything, and then a deputy or a number two who is responsible, who actually runs the ships and the aircraft under you.
Mm.
I got selected, and it's 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 interesting because everybody says you were the first, but anything I did, because I was one of the first women to come in the Corps, so just about anything I did was going to be a first. So I thought that was kind of an odd way to look at it, but I understood. I understood, and that was the way it was. So five of us, I'm sorry, were interviewed, and I got selected as the two-star admiral, which is a senior person, and one of the gentlemen got selected as the one-star, and off we went.
Awesome. What was your first deployment? I mean, as the admiral, and how does your desk job change as you get these promotions on a ship? That makes sense, but you said you're in the office quite a bit too. How does that change?
Well, what happens is you get a little bit, the job gets a little bit more difficult or a little bit more intense. You have more people that you're supervising. It's pretty much like going up a chain of command, whether it's the civilian chain of command or whether it's officer chain of command.
Got it.
Yeah, and you're responsible for much more of the management. You're responsible for much more of the direction of the office that you're running. You're responsible for budgets. The budgets gets bigger as you go up the rank. Those are the kinds of things that change.
Hmm.
And of course, your headaches get bigger and your worry gets a little bit more. But hopefully you've been prepared for that as you've gone up. Each job has gotten just a little bit more complicated, a little bit more difficult, and a little bit more intense.
Yep. So it's prepared you for that next step.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting the parallels with just any promotion, like you mentioned, whether it's civilian or in an officer level. When you get started, you're usually doing the field work and you're kind of more like boots on the ground. And then as you get all these promotions, you get more people and more layers between you and that boots on the ground mentality. And you're still in it, but you're just in a different level. You have more people to manage. There's a lot more paperwork, and yeah, and then you have to start worrying about the budget side.
And when you started getting responsibility for budgets and more people, and you're dealing with more of the direction and the ideas of what needs to be done, and looking to try to get into the future as far as things coming up and that sort of thing, you realize that it was pretty nice when you had the boots on the ground.
Yes. Yeah, you could truly just do your job and not worry about it as much. Absolutely.
It was easier to complain about the seniors when you didn't know all of the details.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. How many times did you end up going out on your deployments?
I went out assignment wise for a
Mhm.
full 2 year assignment, 2.5 year assignment as it was, 3 times, 4 times, 3 times, I think. But I did a number of what we call temporary duty. So if somebody was wanted to take leave and they needed extra people or another
Mhm.
person out, you'd go out for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it was that you needed to do. And that was all based on the length of the cruises that the ship was doing, whether it
Mhm.
was a 2 week cruise or whether it was a month cruise or whether it was a 1 week cruise actually.
What was one of your favorite cruises or assignments?
Wow. Well, I guess I have to say as command. I mean, it's always nice to be the boss, isn't it? Uh, so if you got to go, as we used to say, if you got to go to sea, you might as well go as the boss as well,
There you go.
rather than down below. So so I would have to say the command truly was. It was an experience, and it was good. It was good. I enjoyed that.
Okay. And that was the one you were in the Pacific Ocean, correct?
That's correct. We were in the Pacific. The home port for the ship was in Seattle.
Okay. That's awesome. One of my very favorite, and this is going to kind of tack on to what I just asked you, but one of my very favorite questions to ask is what is your favorite field story or stories to tell? And this could be like the most amazing day out in the field, or this could be just a day where everything went wrong and it makes a really great story now.
Well, the day that I remember the most, and there is one out of probably my entire career, probably because I did have command when we were doing the Eastern Tropical Pacific cruises, which is the dolphin cruises. One evening, all of a sudden, the alarm started going off, and everybody started running from one place to the other. Of course, I went to the bridge to figure out what was going on, and it turned out that there was water coming into the engine, being pumped into the engine room. They didn't know right away why, and you're sitting there trying to make sure that you don't lose power, and not that I could stop us from losing power, but making sure that we did the right reaction if power was lost. And it turned out that it was a generator, the intake to the generator, and the water that was coming in because a hose clamp, a 50-cent hose clamp, vibrated loose and came off. And it's in the engine room. So, and the way that the engine room was set up, the concern was we could have lost all electricity because that salt water, with the ship moving back and forth, was splashing like crazy, and it could have gotten in the circuit board. I mean, it could have been a real mess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the thing that is really interesting is that was one of our scientific cruises, and we had the bunch of scientists that came out were always griping about the number of drills that we had every week, and why did we have to deal with the drills, and why did they have to go to and participate in the drills, or not necessarily participate. They had stations that they had to go to, and they wanted, why do we have to do this, and why do we have to wear closed-toed shoes, and why, just why, and they just like to grouse. And when that happened, and they realized that alarms were going off on the ship, and they realized that people were not stopping to talk to them, that they were in serious mode to get to the bottom of it and make sure that they were where they needed to be and to do what we drilled for.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they were like, oh my God. And when I came down off the bridge, I saw one of them sitting there with his life jacket on, fastened up the way it's supposed to be fastened up, which we always had a hard time getting him to do. And he was sitting on a corner, kind of like with this very kind of frightened look on his face. It was almost like, this is for real. And I think it became the realization that no matter how well you swim, he was not going to swim to the nearest point of land, which was about 3 days away.
Mm-hmm.
Ship wise, it was 3 days away. Yeah, it was one of these things where the reality of why we do this hit full force that night. I did not have another problem with them doing drills or anything when we got ready to have any kind of activity. They were there, they did what they were supposed to do, they didn't grouse and complain anymore. And I thought how now it's pretty funny. Back at the time it was happening, of course, it was not amusing at all.
No.
But now you look back on it after so many years and it's like, yeah, that woke them up pretty well.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, and it did.
Nothing like the threat of the
So
ship sinking to be like, oh, that's why those drills are important.
yes, it's like this is why we do what we do. But at any rate, that was significant. When I think about it now, it's like it happened yesterday. It's that vivid a
Yeah,
remembrance for me.
I can imagine that would have a huge impact. Your command of the ship, and you're taking on water, and that's that would
Not
definitely
good.
make that's not good. Ships like to, that that would definitely make a impact in anybody's brain, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't make your day. That's not one of those things that makes your day.
It makes a good sea story later.
It does. It does.
Most of your shipboard experience, though, was doing these hydrographic surveys. And I don't think we talked about it today, but we had mentioned when I talked to you before, you kind of went in a little bit more detail what a hydrographic survey looked like. And I think your analogy was kind of like mowing the lawn. Like you had a set swath of sea that you were going to monitor, and you made these points. Could you explain a little bit more about like what that looked like?
Yeah, the surveys were laid out. The areas that we were going to work was laid out by the office, and what we would do is go out, depending on the scale of the survey, whether it was a 1 to 20,000 or whether it was a 1 to 40,000 or whether it was a 1 to 5,000, depended on how wide the lines were. The lines were basically straight lines, either going north or south or east to west, depending on a number of other things, terrain and so forth. You would go out, you would lay these lines out, and then we would do what we call mowing the lawn. You go up one line, across, down the other line, across, back up the other line. So it's just like when someone mows their lawn. And the equipment that we used basically detected the length of time it took a sound wave to go out, hit the bottom of the ocean, and return. And that would give you the depth at that particular point. And that's what we did. 11 days out doing mowing the lawn, and then 3 days in port. And that data then was collected. We would process it, apply whatever corrections needed to be applied to it, and then that's what went into the office and eventually looked at by the cartographers and then onto the nautical chart.
Mm-hmm. I have to think that you being a cartographer before you went out on the ship probably helped quite a bit because you knew what they were looking for and kind of how to put it in terms that would be most helpful.
That's correct. It was kind of a blessing, but a curse also, because their expectation was, you know what we're looking for. Why did you do this? So it was kind of interesting sometimes as you made the corrections to the chart, made the corrections to the data to go in. I don't think cartographers, I don't think are ever really satisfied with what comes in. They can work with it, and it's actually not bad data or anything like that. It's just that they like to have the last word, I think.
That's funny. How did the technology change to collect all of this data?
Well, when I was out there, the data was what we call a sounding, and it was one point and a time on that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take a look at some of the data that comes in, they actually can do a swath, and they can actually cover practically the entire bottom. An example would be if there was a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Before, when I was doing the surveys, you might get a point on that wreck, and you'd have to come back and try to figure out what the highest point was. If
Okay.
you've got something like a swash system that they use now, you can actually see it's almost like a copy machine
Mm-hmm.
as it goes across whatever picture you're scanning. It's you start to see the picture come to life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way they do it now. It actually gives you a picture of the wreck, and it's pretty fascinating. It's absolutely amazing the detail that they can get with the new equipment.
Yeah, technology is absolutely amazing.
Because of computers and the upgrades to computers and the way computers are now, it can actually also process more of that information. It can handle larger bundles of data than the systems that we were using could.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole different ball game than it was when I was out there.
Mm. And it really wasn't that long ago to kind of think about how much that's changed. You went from taking like one point and trying to kind of just beam down and take point, figure out which one's the highest one to you just get an entire picture
Yeah,
in one swoop. It's amazing.
and that actually happened probably within the first 15 years, because when I went in the 70s, that was the way we were doing it. And by the mid 80s, the sonar systems and the swash systems that they were being developed, they were kind of crude, but they were still better than what I had. And now today, it's even more incredible what they
Mm-hmm.
can do with them.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, I like to leave the audience with a conservation ask to go forth and take from each episode. What would you like the audience to take from our conversation today?
I would say debris. Marine debris is probably one of the biggest problems I see. The trash that we take to the beach or that just gets into the water system
Mm-hmm.
and ends up in the ocean, it just kills so many animals. And it's only because we are not paying attention and we don't take our trash with us. Just the fishing line that we leave, that monofilament line, you can't see it. And the animals either eat it or get tangled up in it, and it kills them.
Mm-hmm.
And, any other trash, I mean, just a six pack of the plastic rings that holds a six pack of soft drinks or whatever together. A fish gets caught in one of those circles, can't get out, and it eventually strangles them to death, because as they grow, this thing is not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is unnecessary, because what we take with us, we should bring back.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't leave it just because the ocean is as big as it is, it's not a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's always been a kind of a pet peeve with me is just leaving your trash where it does the most harm.
Hmm. Absolutely. Take only pictures and leave only footprints.
Yes, exactly. The footprints will be washed away with the waves, and that's the way it should be. You
Hmm.
shouldn't leave the rest of it because it doesn't belong there.
Absolutely. Yep. Did you see a lot of marine debris during your time offshore? What were some of the things that you saw?
We saw lots of stuff because we were way offshore. You would see pallets sometimes,
Mm.
and it was maybe something that during a storm might have blown off of a ship,
Mhm.
and those pallets are floating along. And it's really kind of interesting because if they're out there long enough, they build up their own ecosystem,
Mhm.
i.e., the barnacles grow, or something grows on the bottom of the pallet, and then the little fish start, and then the bigger fish, and then the bigger fish, and then the bigger fish, because
Mhm.
each group spawns the next larger group, and so you end up with your own little ecosystem of just right around that pallet. But you see, you see all kinds of, unfortunately, all kinds of stuff that people just jettison because they don't want to have to carry it,
Mhm.
because it's not fun to have to figure out what to do with all the trash and all of the stuff, that the waste that comes from a ship that we put in the trash can and then take it out to the street, and the trash guy comes and picks it up.
Right.
We have to actually do something with it. And the big ships, the container ships, and all of the large ships, all of the ships, Navy ships, everybody, even the cruise ships. But the cruise ships do a lot of taking their stuff back ashore because they don't want to pollute up everything either, because it wouldn't be good for their business.
Right.
So it's an interesting problem. But I think, and I don't want to necessarily blame any one group,
Mhm.
but you got the larger ships that are being reviewed and always questioned by the Coast Guard and by federal authorities, where you have the smaller vessels that are not does not have the same oversight,
Mm.
so they tend to be a little bit more loose. And sometimes they're having such a good time that they don't think about, oh, don't put that over the side, don't throw that over the side, kind of
Mhm.
thing. It's a mindset that you have to get into and think about, and consciously think about what you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you see a lot of balloons by any chance?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not. That's not to say they weren't out there, but I did not. I think you probably see most of the balloons closer in to the shoreline.
Yeah. I've been like 20 miles offshore and collected balloons. Like
I could see that. I could see that. Because if you let them go, they travel a long ways in the wind currents and so forth before they lose enough air to actually fall back to the earth.
right.
I don't know. I personally hate balloons. You know, I do. I just think that I realize that there's a community and a market for it, and there are manufacturers and so forth that are affected by and make money from selling these things. But I just, it's one of those things that I just don't buy,
Mm-hmm.
don't want anybody to give me any, just because of the way they are, and the trash that it leaves behind.
Yep.
Because inevitably people let them go,
Mm.
and once you let them go, you have absolutely no control over what happens.
Right. Right. I feel the same way about them. And a lot of people think I'm a party pooper, but I'm like, I found too many of them on the beach, in the ocean. Like I said, I found them 20 miles offshore. I find them in parks. I'm like, I find them everywhere. I don't
Yeah,
love them. They're not my favorite.
it's frustrating because people get them, they love them, but then what do you do with them?
Hmm.
And almost inevitably, they never pop them and put them in the trash. They let them go.
Hmm. Yep. Balloons. If you get them,
Uh,
dispose of them responsibly. That's our other ask. Marine debris, but make sure you're disposing those balloons responsibly.
That's right. But they can become marine debris too, so
Okay.
we don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, there's this statistic out there that 80% of marine debris is actually from land. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely what we do on land affects what's going out into the ocean. So that's a really great ask and a really great point to just be aware of what waste you're producing and where it's going.
Yeah.
Wonderful. This was really awesome chatting with you.
But I tell you that what I would suggest to people, if they're truly interested in what NOAA is doing, what the NOAA Corps is doing, that
Mm-hmm.
they should go to the NOAA website and they can find all kinds of information and they can find all sorts of contact information for different offices for whatever they are specifically interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And those folks can give them a lot more current information than I can
Mm-hmm.
at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
the website is just full of good information. I go there periodically just to see what's new.
Mm-hmm. Retired, but you're not out. Can't let it go.
No, I can't let it go. It's a part of me now. After 31, 32 years, it's hard to just let something go that you really enjoyed. Anything that you really enjoyed and that you're passionate about, it never leaves you. And so that's kind of where I am.
That's awesome. I love that you're still keeping tabs on things.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you
So
so much for chatting with me again. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show.
no problem. I enjoyed it.
Hey, do you want to help the oceans? Have you considered a career in marine biology, but maybe just aren't sure where to start? Head on over to my website, marinebio.life, and subscribe to my newsletter. When you subscribe, you'll receive a free PDF download where you'll learn the 7 steps to becoming a marine biologist without the degree. Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear any insight you've gleaned. Leave a comment in the show notes or send me an email over at marinebio.life. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and, of course, share with your friends. If you want more resources for ocean news, including conservation topics and careers, plus personal insight from me that I just don't share anywhere else, join me at marinebio.life and sign up for email updates. Keep after your dreams and making waves in your community. One person can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.